Welcome to the Driven Career Podcast. This is a space where we talk about professional life and personal development to inspire you to overcome the challenges and grow in your career. And in this conversation, we are going to explore how professionals can still grow even when their managers lack coaching skills. We talk about the real emotional and performance impact of a toxic leadership. And to guide this conversation, I have the perfect guest. I am joined by Samin Saadat. She's an organizational psychologist with a lot of experience helping leaders and companies build healthy and high-performing workplaces. If you're navigating an unclear expectations and unsupportive manager and you want to position yourself for growth in 2026, this episode will give you some clarity and practical tools to lead your career with strategy. Let's dive in. And here we are with Samin. Samin, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I have to say that I was very happy when you said yes to join the Driven Career podcast. And I'm very excited about the conversation we're going to have today. But before we start, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, and thanks for having me. My name is Samin Saadat. My background and expertise is in organizational psychology, consulting, and coaching. Over the last almost 12 years, we've been working with small, mid-sized businesses, with both employees and employers, to ensure we leverage the science of psychology and technology to help businesses grow by growing their people. And also other work we do design a lot of courses and facilitating courses to executives and to master's students to ensure we bridge the gap between academia and workforce and really teaching the skills people need to ensure they're engaged and thriving in workforce before coming to workforce. So taking a proactive approach in that sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so that's why I thought that would be so great to have you here, Sabine, because as you said, you work with both sides. I come from the HR background, so I've been in the chair helping leaders and helping the employees. And then when I learned about you and the work you do, I was like, this is perfect because you know both scenarios. You've been working with both sides. And today, I would like to get our conversation into the way that we talk about a little bit about the managers. I know what's the challenge out there. Developing managers, we know that it's a challenging position. They get arrows coming from every side, from the companies, from the employees. But at the same time, I'm very keen to learn from you other things that we can talk about professionals that are looking to grow, meaning when they are under this leadership, working with these managers, and then we're going to dive in more into how prepared they are or not, or even how to identify that, but really to dive into how they can grow regardless the management style. Because that's what I believe, we can lead our career in any ways. We don't have to wait for others to tell us what to do and really shift that mindset and lead the things that we can do to grow in our career. So with that, I have a question here, Samin, more into many professionals, they feel stuck because their managers, they're either too busy, maybe not trained to develop people, or simply not supportive. From your research and consulting work, what are the first signs someone should look for to understand whether the issue is their own development gaps or their manager's limitation?
I see. So your question is, I'm an employee and I feel stuck in my career because my managers is not being supportive. So how do I know, is it me not putting the enough effort or it's my manager, whether it's my manager's lack of skills or lack of support? So how do I know what's contributing to this? All right.
Yes.
That's a really good question because I've seen this pattern. Most employees, they have this engage me mindset. They sit back, they're waiting for their managers to engage them. And touching on your initial point, which if you don't learn how to be your own hero in workforce, wherever you go, eventually you're going to have this limitations that you won't be able to get into the next level because you're not developing the skills of how to be your own hero, regardless of who you're working with or what environment you're working with. But it's easy to say, very easy to say, oh, you got to make sure you lead by example, you do it, but very, very difficult to do. Let's go back to your question. How do I know, is it me having the issue or it's the organization or my company? All right. I don't like giving advices, but I like asking good questions. I think the very first question they want to ask themselves before figuring out whether it's themselves or their manager is like, what does growth look like for me? Because
Hmm.
it sounds very simple question, but actually is one of those questions that sometimes takes months of coaching session for an employee to understand what is that growth I'm looking for. Because the growth that's been dictated to us is make sure you become the next manager, make sure you have the higher salary, make sure you get this like titles. And we have seen this pattern that many employees they go for those titles and management position and they're regretting it. And they're noticing, sure, I have a higher salary, but with the amount of responsibilities, it's not worth it for me. So it's just it's really hard to sit down and see if I eliminate all the noise of my family and society, what is that growth that I want? What is that I'm valuing? Like, I'll give you one example. Like, sometimes a growth for a person who's been traveling nonstop for work is like the growth for me is to be able to have a job that I don't need to travel. I think then I can invest more with my family, as an example. So that's the very first question. What is that growth you're looking for? The next one is speaking on you need to be your own hero. You cannot, I've seen this pattern. You go to your performance evaluation conversation or any check-in feedback conversation with your with your manager, and you're asking them, all right, I want to make sure I'm growing and learning in the organization. And you're leaving the meeting frustrated that why they are not supporting me. The question you want to ask yourself, were you specific enough to tell your manager what is the support you're looking for? Because
Yeah.
you cannot go to your manager and just say, I want growth, I want to learn, I want to sort of be challenged, but not specify what is that specific support you're expecting from your manager and assuming they should know what support you need. So that's the next question. I know what growth look like for me and I know exactly what that support is. Is that the support to change your schedule? Is that support to mentor you with a specific person? Is that support is to assign a new project to you? Like what is that you're looking for specifically. So in this way, you actually empower your managers to set you up for success. So this is like, first, you want to make sure you do your own job, you do your work, you do your responsibility in that, and then observe whether it's you and your organization. You can't say, okay, it's my organization if I did everything I could. But our brain is wonderful at justifying our behavior. And it's a justification.
Mm,
Our brain does a great
I love that.
yeah, to say, you did everything you could blame your manager, blame your organization. Our brain does a fantastic job at this. And that's the moment you gotta look at. It's very hard to say, but maybe with a mentor, with a coach, with a good friend, to look at the patterns for yourself. The patterns of how often did you blame the external world for not achieving your goal? How often did you blame your teacher? How often did you blame your manager, your parents for not achieving your goal? And if that's a pattern you're stuck with, there is a high chance that it's you. It's you feeling like getting stuck into this because your brain constantly blames the external world for that. However, you can also look at the pattern of that manager, that how many employees are leaving this manager for this specific behavior. And again, our brain does a great job looking at what we need to look at to validate our assumption. And the challenge is really objectively looking at how many really employees realistic they have issues with this manager, finding it like challenging to grow with this manager. And not just look at the 2, 3 employees that had issue and ignoring 10 other employees who loved working with this manager and grew with this manager. I think again, the question is, what does the pattern tell you? What does your past pattern of your organization and yourself tell you was the issue?
Wow. Wow. We have so much to unpack here, Samin. So I got so many great insights here. But I love what you said about the brain because that is so true. How our brain is aimed to look into easy ways to justify things, right? I think it's easy just to go with the flow. Just taking that as an example, as you said, if we have a pattern where we see people leaving that manager, leaving the company because of that manager, uh, okay, that might be true, right? But the second thing that I want to highlight here for us, for the professionals to pay attention, is how much are you allowing yourself to follow that narrative? Because asking those questions about yourself and about how you work best, other people might have different issues. So we need just to be careful to not go with the flow with what we're hearing. What about what we're hearing around? People might leave that manager for similar problems, but sometimes you can be the one that actually overcome that because you're different, because you are paying attention. You may be the one that is seeing the full picture from your company and coming with a different approach. So you might be a star because you can offer a different solution, and you might be different from the others that were leaving the company or that manager, because that needs to be your own truth. Is it happening to me? And is it a fact that I am also leaving, or I can't work with this manager for the same reason that everyone else? Or no, I can be different.
Yeah. I like this, the point is like, all right, I do see everyone's following this pattern, as you said, how I can be different. And this is sort of differentiating, oh, it's normal, but is it healthy for you to constantly exit when things get tough? That's the option other people chose to do, but is that the healthy option to choose? And to add to that point, Rachel, I totally understand. I worked on a daily basis with employees that they're being disrespected or devalued or not being supported. It's very emotional. Like it's a
Mhm.
emotional charged conversation, but it's very emotionally draining. I totally understand. And to add to that point, what helped them to differentiate themselves and not get involved into that emotions and being reactive is being clear on that growth, but also their objective. Okay, my objective with this employee is to make sure I navigate this way so I get to the next level. It's a fine balance. You don't want to become like manipulative, but it's very important to know, all right, my objective is not really try to validate my worth through this person or whatever that is, or to feed my ego, to prove that I'm right, to prove that I'm worthy. But my objective is like to make sure I get into that growth. I found that it really helps to minimize all those emotions and be proactive and not reactive and respond to those um, destructive behavior of your manager. That you're like, my objective is this. I'm not trying to prove anything to this person, as an example. Then that helps you to differentiate yourself with other employees because they listen to their ego. The ego that I want to make sure I'm right, I'm worthy. This person doesn't give me that, so I'm exiting, right?
Yeah, and with that, I mean, another thing that I also see is back to the clarity point. What's the importance of having this clarity and knowing where you want to go with your growth and really set yourself differently from others and not go into these emotional triggers, because we also have what we call our saboteurs, right? The imposter syndrome. And I think there are some situations with some, and I'm talking in general, not only about the professionals and managers and putting anyone in the different box. I think all of us as humans, we read the cues differently, and we need to be aware of our own imposter syndrome. I'm saying that because, again, back to how our brain works, and you're the best to talk about that. But I love what you mentioned about our brain, is because we are reading, we are scanning everyone, and we need to be careful on how we respond to that. Meaning, how that person or that manager or anyone around me in the company acts that triggers my imposter syndromes. I think when you have this clarity, it's much easier to get out of that emotion, all the emotions and all the situation that goes around that, because that is something that block us against the growth that we want in many ways in life and at work. But really be aware of that and work around the clarity.
Yeah.
I love that. And back to, I really like what you mentioned. Again, you were sharing so much, and I was trying to take notes here so we can break down a couple things. But another thing that is important with that is the asking the questions, getting to this clarity, because as you said, growth means different things for everyone. And then you said, am I growing because where I work is telling me what grow means, or am I growing towards to what I want to grow?
Hmm.
And that's the part that sometimes can get a little bit, what I have seen is that is the part that can get the disconnection. It's when you go to the performance reviews and you have a type of goal in your mind that is different from your manager. And here's where, if you're not so clear about what type of support you need, what you want to do and what you want to achieve, it's where we get disconnected. And again, then comes all the frustration.
I think you're touching on a great point that first clarify what is it you want. I think then you can ask for it more assertively, right? No, I think
Yes.
you're touching on a good point. Like another point you touched on is that really where you have the control to change things for yourself is your own behavior, how you're reacting to the situation. So even if the person is becoming very destructive and you get triggers from that, you gotta figure out what is it that's triggering you so you don't react to this. No, I think you really touched on the point that that's where the really control is. Like that's where you can focus on as an employee.
Talking about that. So once we have the clarity, we have the direction and we know where we want to go. And I think that helped us to understand what the gaps are, right? So is that the gap? Is that me on my own development, or is that my manager who's blocking my growth? And I think that would be super nice for us to about the toxic leadership. So we hear that toxic leadership is becoming more common, fast-paced environment. So then back to your work, organizational psychology, what are the emotional and performance costs of working under a toxic manager? And when we have that situation, how can professionals protect their being while staying strategic with their career? Now it's clear that my manager is toxic. I can see that it's blocking my growth. So now what would be the strategy, the best strategy for a professional to work on the way to career growth?
Yeah. So the question is, all right, by now I know 100% my manager is toxic. It's not me. I'm not justifying anything. It's the fact that my manager is a toxic has toxic management practices. Let's put it this way. I'm just sharing this based on my observation that I don't know we are having more toxic managers or we are having more awareness of toxic behaviors in workforce. Maybe many years ago we didn't have the awareness and we found it normal. It's normal for my boss to behave this way. But what I'm noticing now, people are more aware, they're more educated, and they find that sure, maybe it's normal, but doesn't mean it's healthy. We need to differentiate this, that if something is normal doesn't mean necessarily it's healthy. And I've seen this pattern within organization. They keep this toxic manager for years and it becomes normal that, oh, it's normal for this person just lash out in the meeting or you know what I mean? But sure, maybe it's normal, but is it healthy? So I think more and more people are building awareness around that it's not healthy to be in a toxic work environment. It's not healthy to work for a toxic manager. The very first thing I believe is make sure you don't underestimate the negative impact of working in toxic environment on your well-being, on your family well-being, and on your physiology, on literally physical and physiology of your body. And usually the pattern I've seen, the employees with a pleasing mindset, they constantly try to still please the managers and blame themselves and try to improve themselves to ensure they do their job. Because we touched on this. We touched on this that as an employee, you gotta make sure you become your own hero. But overusing any strength is a weakness. And I've seen this pattern with the employees that are not pleaser, they start fighting and they leave the company and they turn this into a very ugly situation for themselves and the manager. But the ones that they become very nice and understanding and pleasing, they are the ones getting the most negative impact because they constantly try to ensure they do whatever it takes to fix the situation. And I think those are the ones that I'm going to focus on in this conversation because I've seen those are the ones getting the most negative impact. That they do everything they can within their control to manage
Yeah.
things and be that top performer, but they're constantly noticing they're still the target of that toxic management practice, and they're still sacrificing their own well-being, health, and their family over this. So I'm going to focus on this
Hmm.
because I've seen this pattern a lot, and those are the most dangerous one that
Yes.
um, you want to target because the burnout they're going to be experiencing, it won't be recovered quickly. It won't be recovered with a quick vacation or the first question that I have from those employees is that they're really having a hard time to wake up in the morning and go to work, and they get this sick stomach when they see the name of their manager in the email. You know what I mean? Like they get into that
Yeah.
phase. Do they know their
Yeah.
rights? I think you do need to know your position. So that's also maybe you're not a pleaser, you're a controller and you're good at speaking up your rights. But do you know your position? Position as an employee. You gotta like understand that as an employee, there are a few things you cannot fight back with your boss. This is not for the pleaser patterns, but for the ones that they're always ready to fight back, right? This is one thing you have to know. Your manager is also under pressure. There are a few things you cannot keep negotiating back with them. You're as an employee supposed to do your job and do it the way that is asked to. We know your position, but also that position gives you some rights that you do have the rights to set boundaries. You have the right to say no. And very easy to say set boundaries, extremely difficult to know. It's a piece of art, really an art to know what are those boundaries I need to set to ensure I have a win-win situation with my manager. And the very first thing is to know your rights as an employee, to ensure you know your responsibilities as an employee so you don't let your ego to speak for you. You let your position. And in my practice,
Hmm.
with employees, I don't use the name of employees because it's not about you, it's about your role. So that
Yes.
differentiate yourself. All right, as a accountant, what are my responsibilities and rights? Not necessarily as John, right? Because when you talk about John, then you talk about you, like you know that the ego fights, right? The next thing is the legal rights, but the next thing is the psychological rights, right? I have the right to say no. I have the right to say I'm not taking on more because I have this. So knowing those rights, and the something that because we work with small, mid-sized organizations, this friendship and family culture may exist. It makes it really hard to
Hmm.
conversation because it's awkward to have this documented conversation. My tip to employee is when you get into the workforce, you're not there to make best friends. You're not there to make any friendship. You're there as an employee. There's transaction involved, and make sure you have the documented conversation of everything because that's what's going to help you. Then with the employer, this is my tip to employer too, not just employee, that this friendship and family culture are going to backfire and it makes it so hard for you to set boundaries. So make sure you have that documented conversation because as an employer or as an employee, when you document every conversation, you know when is enough is enough. When you know that, all right,
Yeah.
I've done everything I can. Things are documented. Then I'm stepping out because I know I have facts, objective facts that this is my threshold.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I want to highlight what you said about setting the boundaries. I totally agree with you. I mean, it's understanding first where you are at and scanning that environment. You also mentioned about maybe smaller companies, and we have nowadays a lot of startup styles where we end up wearing many hats. It is required from you, right? Have that entrepreneur mindset. Why? Because nowadays it required us to do much more. However, doing this much more also requires this understanding of what is my responsibility? How can I serve the company in a way that I'm solving problems? Another thing that I love what you mentioned, Samin, it's about the challenge of saying no. It is hard for a professional get to the point where they learn when should I say no, when enough is enough. So I understand what you're saying that we can be working with in an environment that is challenging. First of all, that is stretching us as a professional. And second, as more as you learn and scan the environment, more you understand what you need to deliver and learn when you have to say no. And another thing that I like what you mentioned, Samin, is about managing the ego. I think out there, especially depending on the type of industries that the professionals are working, the battle of ego is real. So I always like to touch into that as well because that is also something that can block us as professionals. It can block us as a professionals. It can block us as a manager. We might have someone listen to us today that is aspiring to become a manager. But before we wrap up, and we covered a lot about how you can grow, how you can scan your environment, how to deal with toxic leadership and environment. So now, in general, Samin, what would be your drop of wisdom to the professionals out there that are not only trying to survive, but really trying to make a difference in whatever you are at in any type of industry? What are the things that you have in mind that would be something that could be helpful to anyone listen to us today?
Yeah. Um, as I mentioned, I don't appreciate giving advice because what works for one person doesn't. But I really like giving good questions to think about because, as I mentioned, we are going to think about the challenges overnight, but let's think about it in a constructive way. And the question really maybe summarize everything we discuss is how do you contribute to the situation? I think 95% maybe it's your manager, 99% is the organization. What is that 1% contribution you're doing? And a good friend of mine used to say that it takes two stupid for an accident happen. Let's just say your manager is that stupid person, your organization is that stupid person. You don't want to become that second stupid. So, what is it you're doing that is contributing to this situation and create this stupid outcome? Because if one person, and you can be that person, right? If one person makes the right decision that is not based on any emotional reaction or ego um, or for the lack of word stupidity, you will get the desired result because you break that pattern. So I think the question of how do you contribute to this situation will give you the response you're seeking to navigate the challenge you're having in workforce.
I love that. Yes, thank you. And if I can add to that, I love what you're saying about giving that 1% of your contribution. But I always talk with the professionals that I work with about giving your 100%. So now I'm going to add to what you said. So find what is that 1% contribution and give your 100%. So,
Yeah.
because that is nothing, that's nothing better than find where or what you can do and give your 100%. It's really hard to give our 100% to anything. It's hard to be 100% with our family, 100% to keep that diet, 100% working out. So find that 1% and give your 100%.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
really
my addition.
memorize that. I will use it actually in my practices. Very good.
Amazing. I love that. All right. Samin, where people can find you online and learn more about the work you do?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be active on LinkedIn. I try my best, so they can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think, yeah, LinkedIn is the only, I'm not into social platform as much, and I think LinkedIn is the only platform that I try to check time to time. And yeah, and then if they would like to go on the company website, Jalapeno, that app, definitely they can reach out to me through that too.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of this. And our audience can get to know more about your work as well, because all your links will be listed here on the description of this episode. So thank you so much for joining me today. And for all of you that are here listening to our conversation, I hope this inspires you and help you to get more clarity on what the things you have to do to grow and lead your career. We will be back soon with another amazing conversation. And until then, stay driven.